Hey, what's up, everybody? The 2021 CrossFit Open is in the books for all of us, and congratulations to any of you that have made it on to the quarterfinals, or if you're a masters or teen athlete and you're moving on to the age group online qualifier. Congratulations, job well done. And but really, those athletes that do that, right? You're the top 10%, and it just hit me the other day as I was chatting with a buddy in the Mayhem Nation space, is that there's still 90% of us out there, the majority, right, of CrossFit athletes that didn't make it to the next level. So the Open really is our games. It's our season. And that's regardless of whether or not you're going to compete in local competitions and whatnot and still continue to be a competitive athlete in the CrossFit space. But I wanted to just kind of help you unpack your Open performance. So whether you're like me and you're 8 to 10 years into this thing of doing the Open, and or whether or not you're one of those elite athletes, or whether or not you just competed in the Open for the very first time this year, I want to just help you kind of understand the Open a little bit and unpack it, measure your performance, that is, not through the lens of how everyone else did, but how you did relative to your experience, relative to your conditions, your context. Give you some examples. So I'll unpack a little bit about me, and then you can delete my scenario and situation and input your own. But with me, this is my 8th year going into the Open. Now, over the last couple of years, I've gotten to the place where now I'm right on that line of about a 10% in the world athlete. And quite frankly, just had not either A, pushed and trained hard enough to break into that next level, or B, which was the case this last year, is I took a devastating injury, blew out my shoulder back in early November, and really 5 months later, it's still not 100% yet, although I'm getting really, really close. So I avoided surgery and all that kind of stuff. But nonetheless, like so many of you that I know, you've taken some injuries, some tweaks. CrossFit is a high-risk sport. You're putting your body through the ringer, and sometimes stuff just gives out. And that's just the nature of the beast and being an athlete. But for me, I wasn't sure if I could even do the Open. So when I went into this Open, I kept my emotions in check, kept my perspective clear, is that, look, I'm just going to go into this to have some fun. Of course I'm going to register. Of course I'm going to compete. What I didn't know going into it is whether or not I could even be an RX athlete this year. So maybe you're like me. When I first started the Open 8 years ago, I was a scaled competitor. I knew going into the Open I could not do a lot of stuff RX, especially when it came to things like the higher skill stuff, muscle-ups or handstand walks. I wasn't comfortable with some of the higher-end weights under fatigue and all that kind of stuff, double unders. A lot of that stuff, handstand push-ups. I didn't have a lot when I started CrossFit. So I went into the Open knowing I was going to be a scaled athlete. Well, then I committed to training under an RX competitive pipeline, and a year later I was able to begin doing the Open RX and have done now for the last 7 years. This year, obviously, again, the question mark because of an injury. So what I've learned along the way that I want to share with you in hopes that it would help you in your CrossFit journey when it comes to competing, specifically in the Open or in these competitions, where what I've come to know is every second counts. Every rep counts. So again, for the 90% of us, and even potentially you top 10%ers, a rep, just one rep, or just 1 second of a difference in tie break time or finishing time could be the result in you moving dozens, if not hundreds, a couple hundred spots on the leaderboard. When I first started CrossFit in the Open and I was way down there in that middle of the pack category, 1 rep or 1 second could move me 1,000 places up the leaderboard. So that sort of added stress on all of us when we compete in the Open, that's where it comes from. You know that you're going to push yourself harder, most likely, than you most of the time ever do in training. So that's the first lesson I would offer you, is that as you get ready for the 2022 CrossFit season and you're getting ready to compete in the next Open a year from now, dedicate yourself once a week, maybe twice a week, to pick a workout and go at it like it's the last workout you're ever going to do, like it's an Open workout, like every rep and every second counts. Really push yourself, just once or twice a week. You cannot do it every workout, every day, all week long, every week of the year. You just can't. And so don't be naive enough to think you can. But pick that 1 or 2 workouts a week, because if you're like me and you're going to do an Open workout and then retest it a couple days later, you're training yourself throughout the year to do that once or twice a week, all you got, everything you got, okay? And again, we're just speaking about the Open. We're not speaking about local competitions and training volume and all that stuff. We're just talking about the Open. Second thing about this, when you train going into the next year, remember what the Open is like. If you spend all year doing 8-minute workouts, at an 80% intensity, where you're not only going to be shocked by the level of intensity that the open brings, but you're also going to be shocked by the volume. We know that these workouts come up where you have to do a number of repetitions or a number of rounds or both that create a level of muscular and cardiovascular fatigue that is unlike almost anything else you're going to do all year unless you train that same kind of stimulus. What I've gotten to now as a Mayhem athlete is the training volume at competitions, whether they're 1 or 2 full-day competitions locally or the open themselves. I don't normally get too wrecked by them at all, and they end up just being a piece of a training day rather than something like when I first started CrossFit, it would wreck me for half of a week at least, preventing, kind of diminishing my training as I got ready for the next open workout, right? So think about those things. 1 or 2 times a week over the next year, you train or you attack a workout like it's the open. And then secondly, you make sure that you have in your training workouts that are like the open. If you're on an official program like I am with Mayhem Athlete, it's going to take care of itself. You're going to get the volume in under most training tracks. However, if you're not following something like that and you're just following your local box, 21, 15, 9 workouts, is not going to get it done. You're going to be shocked when you get to the open when the repetition counts are up in the 80s or 90s, maybe even 100 or more. 21:59 is just 45 reps. So just think about that as you go forward. As you measure, again, your performance this year in the open, you consider, what can I do to be better next year? These adjustments, I'm telling you, trust me, these adjustments, this dedication to training this way as you go forward will make a massive difference on the leaderboard. You'll find yourself from a middle-of-the-pack athlete to all of a sudden being in the top 25% just like that. My performance this year in the open because of an injury did not allow me to accomplish some of the things from a capacity speed perspective that I normally can accomplish. It's not a normal standard for me. And even with what I was able to do this year, top 25%, even injured. So you'd be surprised how radical of a jump you can make if you just change the way you train and prepare for competition. In this case, the open. So let's look at the 2021 open a little bit and just unpack a few ideas here. So as you know, we got started with 21.1. So Dave Castro announces this workout that was unlike anything else that we had done before. If you've done wall walks, it's been more of an accessory skill to help build some overhead strength and conditioning for progressing into handstand walks. So if you're any kind of a beginner CrossFitter, scaled athlete, and things like that, you're not even thinking about handstand walks yet. So quite possibly you haven't done a whole lot of wall walks. And even if you have, you haven't done them to the degree, again, like we just shared, the degree of volume that we found in the open. So here's what I want to share with you about open workouts and really any workout you're going to do, whether it's in a competitive space or just a normal training session. You got to ask yourself, what is the crux of this workout for me? So if you just use 21.1 as an example, for me, each of you is going to be able to define this in your own way as well. But for me, I knew that with a shoulder injury, I didn't have the sort of shoulder stability that I would have liked to have had. And thus it was going to be an issue for me with how, whether or not I could even hold myself upside down like that long. But certainly the handstand walking-ish motion of the jarring on the shoulder was a real question mark for me. And sure enough, it was. I was not able to push the pace on that. It was a little sketchy. But I knew that double unders for me was not an issue. I knew that once I got to the double unders, I'd be able to kill those things unbroken and get right back to the wall. So for me, I knew the crux of this workout for me was the wall walk. And then that's what you want to determine for yourself, because here's what you're going to discover about CrossFit Open workouts then as you look into 21.2. The 50-pound dumbbell most likely is going to be the crux of the workout for most of you. The question I got from a lot of athletes is like, can I move 50 pounds? Some of you tested it, you tried it, you could do a couple reps, and it was a heavy dumbbell for you, or 35 pounds for the women. So that's a mark where you say, do I do this or do I just scale this workout? Burpee box jump overs for most athletes is not as big of an issue from a skill perspective as certainly from, again, a volume perspective. As you start to burn out and fatigue, those things get really difficult. And that's, again, it has to be a way that inspires you to change the way you train going forward. Then as you get into 21.3, the crux of that workout, if you're going RX, was without a doubt the bar muscle-ups. Now, what I'll offer you is that as you look at each open workout across the season, you're going to be able to follow something like Beyond the Whiteboard, which does such a great job of giving us this graph that shows of everybody that completed the workout. You get this really big spike in the graph that shows you where I would offer you about 75 to 80% of all athletes fall in this realm. We'll say 10 to 15% are going to be very introductory CrossFitters that are going to be not quite even get to that big peak bulk area where the masses are. But then the top 10 to 15% are going to get past that sticking point, that crux of the workout, and they're going to be the ones finishing the workout, getting the best times, lifting the heaviest weight. So when you look at that, that's a great measuring stick as well for you as you train going into the next year, and you look to maybe retest an open workout once or twice over the next year to see if you're getting fitter. That's a measuring stick, because in 21.3, toes to bars, a separator, if you will, it's another term I'll share with you when you're assessing yourself, when you're measuring your fitness. A separator is how many toes to bars can I do. So even though you're doing them RX, if it took you 6 rounds of it, doing just 5 at a time, that's a huge difference. Whereas you progress throughout the next year, if you change that into doing 3 sets of 10, big difference, a lot less time. In my case, I was able to probably do 30 unbroken, but I chose to do 20 and 10. And I know that that's a separator move to get me through that stuff faster. Another separator move is just going to be how well you move 95-pound barbell. Maybe, and again, I'm just speaking to the men, so 65 pounds for the women. How well did you move that? That's an issue to consider as well. When you go back to the pull-up bar, do you have chest to bars? And if you do, just like toes to bars, what's the number you can do? But again, being that it was a 15-minute workout, the way these things are always structured is there's always this moment where it's going to be a wall that the majority of people are going to run into. The separator is how you get through and over that wall. And this workout, the wall was the bar muscle-ups. And it was all about whether or not you could do any. That's the first measuring stick. Then secondly is how many can you do before the time runs out. And then again, that top 10% are going to complete all the repetitions or get really close to completing all 30 repetitions and then get back to that final 15 thrusters. That window is where the separator is for that piece of the workout. And then lastly, for this year's Open, just like there is with every Open, there's going to be a workout where you're going to be given the opportunity to move a heavy barbell. How strong are you? And sometimes that's the separator as well. When you go back over the last couple of years and you had a workout that had things like toes to bars, double unders, and then the heavy barbell ascending ladder of those, double unders is one of those separator moves. If you can do them well and you can do them unbroken, you're going to get further into the workout than those who can't. But then you run into a barbell. It's like, how many times can you move that heavy barbell under fatigue, right? So that's another thing about the Open when you train going forward is how well can you move a heavy barbell under fatigue. Doing all your strength sessions when you're fresh will put you at a disadvantage when it comes to doing competitive CrossFit, whether it be in the Open or local competitions. How well you can move those heavy barbells when you're tired is going to be a major separator. So that's how I measure myself when I look at the Open. I make sure when I'm training, there's those moments when I want to take a little bit more of a break. I realize that, hey, in the Open, that ain't going to happen. In competition, that's not going to happen. And the greater success I can have in those competitive environments really lends itself back to how well I prepare for those moments. So I've got to force myself to pick the barbell up when I don't want to. I've got to force myself to hang on a little longer when I don't want to and see what I'm capable of and start to take note of that stuff so that when you get into these competitive environments, you have a clear strategy that's built on experience. So that's how I measure myself in the Open. I hope that helps you. By all means, if this does help, hit the like button, hit the subscribe button. I love to be able to see that I have the opportunity to share things with you all that's helpful. But also hit me up in the comments or message me directly on social media if you'd like. And let's keep this dialogue going about how you did in the Open and how you want to look to improve going towards 2022. So until then, I'll see you guys on the leaderboard.